Good morning, everyone. Welcome to part two to our forms class. Today, we're going over the next part for Form 21, Purchase and Sale Agreement. And we will continue right where we left off. If you missed part one, you can jump on our YouTube channel, go to the playlists, and go straight to the forms class. And also, I put it in new agents playlist also. So you can find part one in there if you wanted to catch up on that. But let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. Hide this. All right. So we are continuing right where we left off. We are on number 14, FERPTA. So I know it's crazy that we're the hour and a half class just through 1 through 13, but we did actually go through and dive in on a lot of the insight to the actual forms manual, which we always use, because you're going to get way more information in here. So seller citizenship, FERPTA, specific term 14. Seller citizenship in FERPTA requires seller to warrant that seller is or is not a foreign person for purposes of U.S. income taxation. General term J, seller citizenship in FERPTA requires seller to execute and deliver to closing agent the FERPTA certification form 22E. It says within 10 days of mutual acceptance. That is actually lazy. I mean, if listing brokers don't actually have it uploaded in their supplements, really, I mean, there's just no excuse. We're really to that day and age where, you know, you're instantly clicking and getting to the information right away. It should just always be in there. Listing brokers needs to get that, you know, filled out just like their seller disclosure statement, just like their, you know, just like the rest of the, you know, the legal description, your preliminary title report, if the house was built prior to 1978, the lead-based paint disclosure, all of that should be done and uploaded. So it's crazy to me that they say it's within 10 days, especially when we start reading in a little further. If the seller fails to timely provide the FERPTA certification to the closing agent, the buyer may give notice that if the seller does not provide the certification to the closing agent, within 3 days, the buyer may terminate the agreement. If 3 days pass and the seller has still not provided the FERPTA certification to the closing agent, the buyer may terminate the agreement and the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. So if we look into the forms manual, and let's put in, so there should be only two, FERPTA 22E, and then in the 90s, there's the 90 FERPTA, buyer's FERPTA notice. So this form is it should be a dual use form. And it's basically buyer's right to terminate notice. And then there's the actual buyer's notice of the termination. So you would be using this form in that event that you can't get the FERPTA disclosure. Now, there's no exemptions for this. If clients have questions about, hey, I'm here on a visa, if they, you know, if they're not a US citizen, but they have other, you know, like they work for Microsoft or something, like there's all these different programs. You can't really answer the question unless you're a tax professional. So you really got to send your clients to their CPA. Say, hey, unfortunately, I cannot tell you whether or not you're, you know, whether or not you would mark this as yes or no. You'd have to talk to your accountant and to your CPA. That's the only clear way to be able to get that figured out. Okay, so under the FERPTA, the disposition of U.S. Real property interest for a foreign person is subject to income tax withholding. Buyer is responsible for finding out if seller is a foreign person for the purposes of U.S. income taxation. And if buyer fails to do so, buyer could be held liable for the tax. This provision calls the party's attention to this issue and requires seller to make the necessary certification for tax purposes. General term J requires seller to pay any fees incurred by buyer related to the withholding and payment of the FERPTA tax. Please note that when buyer is writing the offer, buyer likely will not know if seller is or is not a foreign person for the purposes of U.S. income taxation. Accordingly, buyer may leave this term blank to allow seller to make the appropriate selection. General term R states that just like the insertion of a seller's name, the seller's selection of citizenship status is not considered a counteroffer. So if 22E FERPTA is not uploaded in the supplements and you're the buyer broker and you're writing the deal, which box are you marking? Nothing. Yeah, you don't know. You don't know what their disclosure is. Now, when the leasing broker receives the offer and then the seller marks their box, right? When it comes back, it does not need any counters. There's no, no initials needed for that. That's an actual disclosure. Jim?
So what if the seller or the seller's agent lies and says, is the buyer still liable? Because if they say, no, we are not, but then.
Oh, I'm getting to that. Get ready. So there's still no 22E FERPTA form. How many days do they have to get that to you? 10. You really got to make sure that happens super fast. I will just tell you, if you let it get past the 10 days and stuff and you still don't have it, you let the buyer close on the deal and somehow, some way, escrow doesn't do it. Escrow is supposed to certify, get their form filled out and then send that along too. But if somehow it doesn't happen, who's going to be paying the tax later when the IRS comes knocking on the door?
The selling company, the selling agent.
The buyer, and then maybe you as the selling agent might be, they might come and sue you. So let's see, does it say? Let's jump into the form real quick. Let me look and see where it said. Right here. So J, this is the section. So seller warrants that the identification of seller citizenship status for the purpose of taxation, blah, 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 is on 14 is correct. So if they lied, right, that's if they marked it and they're lied, right, they're basically in breach and it's fraud. But this is the part we need to talk. Let's see. Oh, there's this thing for notice.
Where is that? Is that in the FERPTA form? The seller then the manual for the FERPTA form? Is that what you're looking at?
No, this is Form 21. We're not, Jim. We're not. We'll get to the FERPTA form and forms class when we go through the series because we're still on 21. But it says that they have to execute this, right? They will execute it and that you got within 10 days to get it. If seller is a foreign person, right, there's taxations, they're going to hold the money. And it is actually, depending on their obligation and their income bracket, all the other stuff, there are a whole bunch of things that come into play. It could be anywhere from 10 to 15% of the purchase price. Can you imagine if the buyer's like all of a sudden later, it's $500,000 house. They're like, yep, we want your 50 grand. We want our 50 G's from the buyer. And they're like, what are you talking about? Yep, we just got a bill from the IRS. So this did happen about 3 years ago. 3 years ago is the last one I know of. I believe it was a Skyline broker and a Windermere broker who the transaction was between. It was the same scenario. Like I said, they didn't mark it. They didn't get the form, and the escrow, I don't know who it was, they just didn't get it. They didn't do it. So unfortunately, the buyer got hit with it, and of course a lawsuit ensued.
So, so yes, that brings a question, because I mean, this could be potential, like the FERTA, because there are a lot of them are, they're not in the supplements. We most agents.
Yeah, I mean, I did deal, I helped write up two deals last night. One of them, all they had in there was a legal description. That's it.
And that's it. And that's the experienced agents are like that.
Yeah.
And so consequently, so what I'm trying to find out to mitigate my exposure
Mhm.
is, so we have 10 days for it to get it. If they don't give it to us, the buyer can walk away.
Buyer has the choice of, they didn't get it. You can send the notice and it gives and then 3 more days, then they can terminate with that 90 percent.
So the way for me is to put it back into the buyer's court, say, we haven't had this notice.
Yep, we still haven't got it. It's time. Yep, now we got to send this because they still are not providing it. If you have issues like that, definitely, you don't even have to talk to me. You can just circumvent me, go straight to their designated broker, pick up the phone and call. Say, hey, I've been trying to get this from so-and-so. I don't like turning them in, but I'm gonna have to. I just can't, I'm not getting it. Cause it could seriously affect your buyer.
Yeah, and that's because, basically because the buyer, unless there's something there, I mean, it's gonna be a huge liability.
Yeah.
And 500,000 to start a home, it could be more like $8-9 million.
Yeah, so exactly.
It's like, no, it's not the good deal you thought of. You gotta pay somebody else's
Mhm.
taxes, and it's not beyond people to try,
You never know.
Came out because sellers were leaving the country.
Yeah, there's fraud out there. We just had a fraud land listing just this week. Another one. Completely fake, fraudulent, IDs, everything.
In terms of selling the land?
Trying to sell land. Yeah.
That would be easy to do.
Yeah.
If somebody could catch it.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Number 22 here is the information verification period, right? So we've talked about this a lot. It's not quite so, I guess, easy to understand because it's a little bit more complex with the idea. But the information verification period now has this new term, right? It's on the front page now. It used to be, it's still item W on the form for the boilerplate language for the explanation, but it was never moved to the front of the page to basically either it expires at a certain time where you choose, or it's automatically satisfied and waived. If you're not dealing in multiple offers, if you're not dealing with multiple offers at all, never click the satisfied waived. You should always have this. Honestly, keep it at 10 days is fine. Mark box, do 10. Or if you're having a home inspection and you're doing 5 days for the inspection, have this for 5 or 6. Actually, no, don't do that. Have it for 5. Either do 5 or 10. 5, weekends and holidays don't count, so it's just business days. And realistically, the information verification period is a very important phase for buyers to do their due diligence, go through and investigate the property to make sure it's exactly what they want to buy, and to make sure that they have time to go to the county, to the city, go to the planning and land services department, go to whoever they need to, maybe the schools, to make sure that the school zone is accurate. You just really want to make sure that the buyer has their timeline to verify all that information. If the buyer doesn't have the time at all, and the buyer closes on the deal and they waived it and they waived inspection, and there's an issue and they're like, wait a minute, the seller said it's this and it's not. What's the buyer's only choice? What do they do then? They own it now, but they bought this place because of what was said by the seller or maybe an advertisement. What's the only choice, Amy? What can the buyer do after it's closed? Anybody want to unmute? Sue. Right, sue them. Without this information verification period from happening, it really only gives the buyers only choice in the future later when they never got a chance to do that is to sue the seller. So a lot of times listing brokers even, they don't understand this concept. They think, oh yeah, the buyer's waiving it. It's satisfied. I've had some people even say, well, wait a minute, they can do that, right? They can set, I'm like, yeah, they can, but did they really satisfy it? Did they really do their due diligence and take the time? Probably not. If you, right when you get an offer submitted, like you just wrote up an offer yesterday. Did your buyers go call the county and go investigate the school zones and all the stuff that's important to them? No. They usually don't do that until they're right at the beginning of the deal. So it's very important to understand this.
Question about that. So
Mhm.
if you're a listing agent and you notice that it's waived,
Mhm.
but you know that they can still sue you.
You might want to counter it.
You might
Maybe,
just say, I didn't want you to put 5 days verification.
maybe talk to the seller. Yep,
Yeah.
talk to the seller and explain what this means. So actually, Kenny, you want to read 22?
Oh, yeah. Specific term 15, information verification period. In connection with general term W allows buyer time to verify that the information provided by seller in the listing firm about the property is accurate. During this period, buyer should verify the accuracy of the information contained in the listing, flyers, advertising, marketing materials, etc. The parties negotiate the length of buyer's review period in specific term 15, or buyer can satisfy waive the provision as part of buyer's offer. The buyer may terminate the agreement by delivering notice of materially inaccurate information within the negotiated time period, or 10 days after mutual acceptance if specific term 15 is not filled in. Buyer may not use the buyer's notice of termination information verification period, Form 90Z, for this notice.
Okay, so there's our process. There's what you can do. Now, information verification period, some people get confused and they think, oh yeah, this is just like the home inspection contingency. It's a get out of jail free card. They can just terminate for anything, any reason. That is not true. You must have something that you are verifying is inaccurate. We had last year, we had, maybe it is 2 years ago now. We did have a buyer submit an offer. They were competing. There was like 3 or 4 offers on this house, and they basically our buyer got cold feet. They're like, we just feel like we're paying too much. And here they're the ones that won the offer. They had waived inspection. They waived the Form 17. And somehow our broker accidentally left the information verification period blank. And so it defaulted, I think, to the 10 days. And so we literally were in the deal. It was like the 10th day. And we only had till 9 p.m. to basically try to find something that was inaccurate that we could terminate for. So we are, I went over, reviewed with our broker. We said, hey, let's call the buyer. Let's figure out some things. Hey, did you find out the schools? Was the school zone correct? Is this right school? And we looked at the listing and it said buyer to verify, buyer to verify, buyer to verify for, of course, the high school, the junior high, and the middle school or grade school. And so we're like, oh man. So yeah, this is going to be tough. We need to try to find something. And then the buyer said something right before we were getting off the phone. The buyer said, well, the other thing that kind of upset us too is that it said that this house had AC and it doesn't. And we were like, yeah, the house doesn't have AC. We're looking on the listing. We're like, no, it doesn't. Why? Where did you hear that? Oh, it was on their flyer. We were like, it's on their flyer? Do you still have it? They go, yeah, I think it's in our car. Let me go grab it. They went out and grab it. And sure enough, on that flyer, it says home, stay cool during the summer heat with AC. Home has AC. And we scanned it, got it. We had the buyer send it to us, and we sent the 90Z. We called the listing broker, who was a very, very experienced, top producing listing agent for a competitor. And we called her and said, hey, we've got some bad news. Unfortunately, we'll be, terminating this deal. And she's like, well, no, you're not. Like, well, if you are, you lost your earnest money because you got no contingencies. Well, actually, we do have our information verification period. And she said, well, we didn't put any schools in. So you can't, there's a lot of people that really associate that first thing with the schools. And it's so funny, especially brokers who are experienced, that is something that they always kind of like will go to first. We said, no, actually, we're terminating because you said that the home had AC. She said the home does not have AC. We said, yes, we realize that. She's like, we didn't put that in the listing. We go, no, you did not, but it was on your flyer. And we scanned the flyer over with the 90Z and our form 50 to get the earnest money back. And she literally went silent on the phone. She was like totally like, okay, and hung up. She called us later. She had her seller sign off on it. She said, that mistake will never ever happen again. Her marketing person
Probably
just took the flyer from the last listing and just swapped out the images, changed the address, changed the price, and totally forgot the bullet points from the previous listing on that. So you must, if you're going to terminate with the information verification period, you must have something that you are verifying. And just like it says, it could come from even the broker. It can come from the broker's information. So it's not a get out of jail free card, but it must be something you can verify. Square footage is one that is tricky. We always got to put in a source of where the square footage is coming from. I usually get that question, like, can we say, hey, the square footage, we found one that the square footage was off by like 3. Instead of like 22.0 or 22.10, it was like 22.07 was the actual square footage, according to the appraiser. I said, that is a very difficult one. You're probably going to get pushed back because this could be a human error. I go, if you're looking to do this, I would say you better seek legal advice because we can try it, but be prepared for pushback. Okay. So that is a tough one. All right. 23 is the agency disclosure for buyer. Check the appropriate box to indicate who represents the buyer. Note, if the listing broker procures the buyer but does not represent the buyer as a limited dual agent, the buyer is unrepresented. The buyer broker and buyer brokerage firm section of the purchase and sale agreement should be left blank, as there is no buyer broker. In order to be a limited dual agency, under agent under RCW 188620, a broker must have a written services agreement with the seller, example listing agreement, and a written services agreement with the buyer, and both the seller and the buyer must consent to limited dual agency in those services agreements with initials. You have to have all 4 of those elements. Otherwise, you cannot be a limited dual agent. Note, the disclosure for the buyer brokerage firm is made in general term T, agency disclosure, which states that the buyer brokerage firm's designated broker, buyer broker's branch manager, if any, and buyer broker's managing broker, if any, represent the same party that the buyer broker represents. Phew. All right, so what that looks like is in this section. So no matter what, you're going to be representing someone. You must represent someone in a transaction. If someone called you and said, hey, Gavin, hey, my friend wants to buy my house. Hey, can you just do the paperwork for me? You don't have to do anything else, just the paperwork. We got everything else. We're very experienced. Can you just write it for us?
So I have to.
Can you do that?
Represent somebody.
You sure? I'll pay you $1,000 under the table right here. Why not?
The Washington state law says I have to choose a party to represent. So I can't
So you're
represent you, or I could represent the buyer, and one of you could go and represent it, but I have to sign an agreement with somebody.
But that's changed because it didn't used to be that way. It could be.
It's always been that way.
Well, they used to have a thing where you could facilitate a transaction.
That's not, Jim, has there ever been a thing for brokers to be allowed to facilitate a transaction?
Yes.
They could just do paperwork
Yeah,
and not
dangerous. I mean,
represent?
it's dangerous to do, but.
Is that before 97?
Well, remember there on the first sale agreement, it said who you represent, so buyer, seller, or neither party, there was 3 check marks. So you could say neither party, so it's all
Right.
true.
So was that,
That's because old timers, man.
I know, but was it 1997 that was the time? Because agency law changed
Oh, it
then
was
the
since
biggest.
then, it
No,
wasn't.
but basically it's in that period of time, because I remember the time when there was no buyer brokerage
Yeah.
and it wasn't around. But when buyer brokerage came around, suddenly, and it disappeared. I'm not saying, but there's a window of that time.
Yeah.
And I want to go back about 2008 or somewhere around there.
Well, I know for sure, when I got started in 2000, there were buyer agency agreements in the MLS. They had the actual form, but nobody used
We
it.
always represented the seller.
Right,
Yeah,
pretty
we
much.
never had a buyer agent.
Because I remember the gentleman, I remember the old attorney who represented the multiple, telling the case and he's passed away, how at that time, all agents represented the seller, and this is Capitol Hill. He was some agent who wasn't of his firm, made misquotes about his house, and he thought, I'm liable for that information. And so that's when it became this huge push.
Yeah, that was before 97.
Right, that was, so, but there's, I can't tell the window, nor do I keep all the old sales and purchase agreement. There was a period of time and there was, neither. I mean, that's what, I can't remember when I was at Keller Williams, but it's like.
That long ago.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. I mean, it was a period of time, but it's like, but I'm glad this is much better.
Yeah.
And because for me, at least what I see in my history of what the agents I've met, most of them are very unprofessional. And so what we do here is basically a way to say, we know our business. Because I've had too many agents, suddenly I'm going, oh, okay.
Yep. All right. So number 16, that's your choices. Don't forget, if there's any unrepresented party to the contract at all, just like we read in the manual, like let's say the buyer's unrepresented, and you are the listing broker, do not fill in this other side at all. Because you don't want to confuse them to think that they've got representation. So they would be unrepresented. And the other thing you really want to make sure you have in the deal, I don't know if they still have 22RA, is it still here? Yeah, there it is. And make sure you do include a 22RA.
What's that one?
That's the attorney review contingency for that other party.
So the buyer would have a chance to take that.
Yep, they
contract
could
to an
take that
attorney.
contract to an attorney, and if they don't do it,
That's all.
you just put the biggest shield of protection in front of you and us. It's such a good thing to do. Even Aaron was like, yeah, 100%, like that should be done. In fact, if you choose our forms pack in transaction desk for an off-market deal, 22RA is already in the forms pack. I added that in there. All right, let's keep going. All right. Agency disclosure seller, check the appropriate box. To indicate who represents the seller in order to be a limited dual agent, it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. Buyer brokerage firm compensation. We are definitely going to read this one. Here we go. This is the one that's on the top of the charts. So buyer brokerage firm compensation in the seller's offer field. Insert the buyer brokerage firm compensation offered by the seller, if any. If the seller offered a numeric amount, indicate whether the offered compensation is a flat dollar amount with a dollar, or that's in the drop-down menu, right? The first box, or a percentage of the sales price, percent. If the seller did not offer a numeric amount, but indicated that the buyers are invited to submit a request as part of the offer, example, request an offer, or that seller declines to offer compensation and does not intend to pay toward the buyer brokerage compensation, example, none or zero, insert the seller's message as published in the buyer brokerage compensation field of the listing. If the seller did not provide any information, insert in the field. That's weird, like that's like a minus. It's like a strike.
Yeah, they want you to strike it. Like you said yesterday at the meeting.
Yeah.
You put a line through it.
Yeah, so zero, line, there's gotta be something filled in.
NA, okay.
So I've got conflicting, I love that you asked this question about NA. Gavin's asking, is NA okay? Two attorneys say no, one said yes, of all the ones I've asked.
This on the barrister thing you went to, or?
Mm-hmm. Well, that
Maybe
too.
better just to say what the form says to do, strike it out.
Yeah, so
Zero or none.
it's okay. Like now, the cool thing about transaction desk, if you write it up through transaction desk, it's automatically gonna fill in whatever's in the listing. So if that seller said, I'll put in $1,500, right? It's going to fill in exactly what is in the listing or whatever. 15 grand, whatever is in there, it's going to fill it in and populate it. Now, the seller has the choice to say, request an offer also, right? It could potentially even say that. And it might be in the listing, or they could leave it blank. If they leave it blank, unfortunately, what do you think is going to happen in that spot?
Nothing's gonna.
Nothing will be
You have
there.
to- you have to fill it out.
So now you need to make sure you're marking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything is okay. If you wanted to, I mean, honestly, just like I said, you can even put in you could do dashes. You could do that, right? That shows that there's something there that it's clearly showing that you understand that there needs to be a mark here. Annie and Aaron, they both like the 0. They like the, 0. Or even if you did, this 0.00.
So that's for buyers.
That could be interpreted 0%,
What's the
$0.
offer?
Yeah, what the seller's offering.
Right.
If it's left blank,
Then the
just
buyers-
just fill it in, like in the listing. I'm talking about in the listing, there's
Right.
nothing there.
Right.
Just put something there so that it shows you took the time to actually understand what the seller is telling your buyer. Like, I'm not offering anything. No matter what, even if it says none, seller refuses to pay, whatever. This form allows you to negotiate with just this box. There's nothing else needed to come along with it. Nothing. You don't need to include your buyer brokerage services agreement. Literally this week, guess how many I've talked to brokers? Like how many times agents out there, buyer agents are sending our listing brokers their freaking agreements.
There's no reason to.
Like 7 or 9, I think I'm up to this week.
So what happens if the listing agent requests it? Say, okay, my seller might play, but I want to see what your buyer is willing to or already committed to pay. Seller requests it, then it's probably in your best interest.
Wonderful question, wonderful question. You want to know what really it comes down to? It's exactly the same thing as this. Gavin's got multiple offers. He's the listing broker. Hey, Gavin, how's it going, man? How many offers do you have?
Like 4 offers right now.
Really? Who's the highest? What's the highest amount?
Mm,
Is anybody paying closing? Is your seller paying closing costs on any of those? Is anybody closing in 10 weeks? We can close in 5 days. Will we win? What do we need to win? Tell me.
Why would you give away your cards?
Is what I'm doing,
Would it be in your best interest?
What-
Yeah.
what I'm doing right now, does that happen?
Yes.
Yeah, damn right it does. Is he allowed to tell me?
Seller will happen, seller.
I mean, yeah, I would ask the seller, be like, hey,
There you
they're
go.
asking this, what do you think?
There you go. That's the truth. That's how it really is in the field. Gavin's not supposed to say anything unless his principal has given him permission to
So
do
I
so.
would say.
You would have to say,
I would say, Eric, let me talk to my seller and see what they think.
Well, wait, is there something that,
But my question was.
same thing. Okay.
You're asking, well, okay, so you're asking my seller.
Yep.
To pay 2.5.
Yep.
Okay, we've agreed to pay nothing in the listing. Let me see your buyer brokerage or your buyer representation agreement.
Yep.
See what your buyer's willing to pay and maybe we'll play.
So can I just send it over to him? What do I gotta do?
Ask the buyer.
I gotta talk to my principal. I gotta
Right.
talk to my buyer. They're asking for it. Do you want me to share this? Typically, it's not done. Hey, this is Eric. How's it going? Jim, I see you got a listing here. Hey, can you send me your 1A? Well, why not? I really want to see what your seller agreed to.
It's not done.
It's not really done. It's not in
It's
practice,
not- it's
but
not
there's
standard
nothing to
practice.
stop you from asking. And you should be asking, I
Well,
guess, you know,
well,
why
no,
not?
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing, I've done, like, what is the best offer, what, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we all do that in my multiple offers, especially in the COVID market.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it's kind of like, some agents will tell you, because,
Yeah,
you know.
you
it's-
absolutely should, even though you're not supposed to. I mean, absolutely, you're working for your client. The funny thing is, that story I told you about all those offers of how many we received this week. Guess what? Like 4 of them
Right,
expired, wrong area.
in the offer,
Yeah, no, in the buyer broker services agreement, they were already, it was already expired. One of them said whatever the seller's offering is what they're charging. One of them had, one of them had Pierce County on it, and then this house is in King.
so,
Well, that's horrible when you learn something. If they put zero, then you get zero.
You can't say that, though. You're not allowed to do that. You can't say whatever the seller's, you can't
No, no,
charge
no,
a
I
buyer
know.
whatever's,
No, I know.
whatever.
You have to put a numerical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it has to be specific.
Percentage or.
Yeah.
Recall Annie's saying, so yeah. But I just find it amazing.
All right, let's keep reading. In the amount to be paid by seller field, insert the amount buyer is requesting that the seller paid toward the buyer brokerage firm compensation. This is a term that seller may accept or negotiate as part of the offered terms. Note that a buyer's offer must have both the seller's offer field and the amount to be paid by seller field completed. The seller's offer field is for disclosing to buyer any seller offer toward the buyer brokerage firm compensation, including the amount of any such offer, a disclosure required by RCW 1886-30 1G2. The amount to be paid by seller field indicates the amount that the seller will pay towards the buyer brokerage firm compensation as agreed upon by buyer and seller, and this field must be completed regardless whether such amount matches the seller's offer field or is a different amount. If the seller's offer is greater than the amount to be paid by seller, buyer may request that the difference be applied as a credit to the buyer by selecting the checkbox, addendum for buyer credit, and attaching the addendum for buyer credit MLS form 41C, or a similar form to request the credit. And this is the part, even when I read this now, I'm wondering if we're gonna get another forms update and change, because we're seeing issues
Well, there's
still.
confusion.
There's definitely a little bit of confusion. Related to,
Where do you negotiate that? So on.
yeah, so let's go back.
Let's say you want to counter that, should you strike it right there?
Yep, so watch this. We'll do, for our example, we'll do money for the sake of being in a class. And seller's offering $3,000. Okay. Your buyer broker services agreement is only for $2,000. Okay. The only time that you can actually, or how they designed this section to work and this form, the way they explained it from the forms committee and the notes and all the other stuff that the attorneys talked about, was the fact that if what buyer broker is charging the buyer is less than what seller was offering, they need to be able to tell where the funds are going to go, right? Or if they were to leave this alone, right? If you did not mark the box, that $1,000 is supposed to go back, or yeah, it's go back to the seller, right? Automatic, like you don't have to do anything else. There's no paperwork. They wanted to make it an easy process, right? So, but if you're like, hey, you're giving 3,000, if you're giving 3,000, we're only offering 2, you need to mark this box. And what this means is that you are automatically supposed to just go right back and go to the 41C and I know this isn't the 41C class, but we will get to that one.
Yeah, that's all right. 'cause
So
it
that
all
way
goes
the buyer
together.
can get that $1,000.
That way the buyer will automatically get the $1,000 to be used towards closing costs, and if for some way, somehow, shape or form, that's more than what the buyer can take because the lender's credits were maxed out, then it's an automated reduction in purchase price. So the way they designed it is actually very wise, very smart.
This is the 41C.
Yep,
Or what I'm hearing you say is that seller offers 3,000, you have a buyer brokerage agreement for 2,000.
Mhm.
So you can go to, so you basically put 2,000 and you fill out the 41C to see where the other $1,000
Yep.
could be allocated.
yeah. Do you see how this it's got no language? You know, most of the time there's blanks to see how much is the credit, blah, blah, blah. There's none of that. They wanted to make it very, very, very simple to say, oh, seller's offering more than the buyer broker is charging. Okay? The buyer has a right to those funds. They're the ones
You
paying,
wanna call the
right?
lender, say, hey, is there extra seller credit we can
Yeah.
get? If not, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean.
But no matter what, see if there's more, if it's greater than, you'd always just use this and just mark the box, and it says the difference between the amount of seller's offer for buyer brokerage firm's compensation and the amount to be paid by seller shall be credited to buyer's obligations at closing. If buyer is obtaining a loan or loans to purchase the property, seller's credit to buyer is subject to buyer's lender's approval. Any amount not approved by buyer's lender shall be, check, applied as a reduction in the purchase price. So let's say, yep, buyer's maxed out. Purchase price was $501,000. All of a sudden they got 1,000 left. They can't use it. Now that it's going to be, the purchase will be 500. The problem is escrow. Someone's gonna have to like stay on it, say, hey, escrow, I talked to the lender, they can't use the credit. We need to make sure you see this addendum. It's gonna be a reduction in the purchase price. There's a little bit of work to be done, and that's the part that's kind of falling through the cracks right now, I
Is
heard.
there a less clean workaround to modify the buyer representation agreement up to 3,000 instead of 2?
That was one of the things I
You can, but it must be amended before you even write the offer.
Correct.
So if you see the difference.
If you see there's a
You
difference,
see that listed?
yep, you're supposed to, the way they even explained it at the Battle of the Barristers
Right.
was, okay, it's time to have another consultation with your buyer. Talk to the buyer, say, hey, it looks like the seller's offering 3,000. We're only, charging 2. And the buyer's like, wow, man, we've seen like 40 houses. I feel like you've earned that extra 1,000. I'm fine. Let's amend this. Let's amend with a 41A, and let's amend our agreement for just this offer.
Maybe it's just for that property.
Yep, just for that property. Any amendment you make should be for individual properties.
Because what the thinking is as to why you should do it before you write the offer.
Why? It's because that if you don't, you're kind of falling into that trap of the NAR settlement of the lawsuit because of the settlement says that there no overages could go to the firm. So if you remember our old agreements, literally we had it to where, oh, mark the box, anything greater than whatever I'm okay to get. They wanted to abolish the manipulation of money in the event that it's higher, it should go to the buyer.
Seller's still getting dinged for 3.
Yep.
So I'm gonna modify my buyer representation agreement after we get it together, to say 3 instead of 2. Who is harmed by that?
The buyer,
The
the buyer
The
is.
buyer's agreeing to it. He's still getting the 3,000. He's still getting the benefit of it. It's not like I'm taking it or the firm's taking it. The buyer still gets 3,000. The credit addendum is a lot cleaner. I get it.
Yeah.
But I'm just not sure why after the fact you would modify it.
It puts the control into the buyer and the transparency. The problem is that the transparency to the buyer so that they understand the fact that, hey, what you charge, think about it this way, listing agreements. Okay, seller, let's list your property. I'll do this amount, this is what I'm gonna charge you. But if a certain buyer comes, you're gonna pay me more.
No, but the agent's not getting the benefit of it. The buyer still gets the benefit of 3, of upping the 2 to 3.
Well,
It's not the agent's not, it's not.
how I.
There's,
how I-
how's, it- no, the broker's getting the benefit. The broker's getting the benefit, not the
If you're
buyer.
upping your fire service agreement, you're basically saying I'm getting paid more for this.
Yeah,
And this happened
You just,
after,
it's kind of like a bait and switch feel. you know what I mean?
How
exactly.
is it, how does it work now with bonuses? You know, new construction, you give it $10,000.
You have to do the same thing. You'd have to amend your agreement before they write it. Yep, you'd have to do it. One last question, we'll have to keep moving. and
well,
we're
no,
gonna-
when I saw, but yeah, because didn't this come about? Had this change after the finally came down to the NAR ruling to clean up what we had before in the buyer brokerage agreement?
Mhm.
Because how I understand is you make an agreement with your buyer and let's say it's not 1,000, let's say it's 10,000, they're offering 30,000, we want 20,000, there's a $10,000 difference. The buyer might say, you know, I mean, you can still raise it, at least you have the opportunity to ask for more and they can say yea or nay.
Yeah, I mean, part of the NAR settlement, the agreement was that you cannot, there can be no overages going to the firm. Whatever you're gonna charge is the amount they're gonna agree to that they charge, and then they're in agreement of what they're gonna be paying you. You can't just keep changing it, if you constantly are manipulating it, that's where they looked at, like, you can't do that, and you cannot filter listings. So that was the reason why we had to update our agreements. That's why we're like, okay, our old ones, if you didn't mark that box that any overages goes to the firm, and if you did not mark the box or the section to where you'd filter listings, whether a seller was or wasn't offering compensation, if you left those off, you didn't even have to amend your agreements from last year or from the beginning of the year. But if either one of those were done, yes, then you must have updated the agreements because you were going against the settlement, basically.
I'm showing a new home, new construction home where the seller is offering the agent a $5,000 bonus. For any deals that close for the end of the year, whatever, I have to amend my buyer representation agreement for that one particular instance.
Yep.
Because where you
For
see,
the promotion.
And you amend it for only that
Yeah, for
deal.
that one instance, yeah.
And in the event it does not come through, they do not close, then it will automatically revert to your original
Got it.
agreement.
And
And we
what-
got that language in our office clauses, so it's already in there.
and what form would you do to, so basically, or just be like you do this 20 or 41C for an individual property, because where you see really a disparity in commissions when I'm, listing land. I mean, some are 3%, some are 2.5%, and some are 5% still. And so there's a huge thing in the price, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you know you're gonna be writing it, amend it for just that offer, and you use whatever you used before. If you use the Northwest MLS 41, then you gotta use the Northwest MLS 41A. If you use the John L. Scott version, JLS 41, you have to use the JLS 41A to amend
Well,
it. You
that's-
just gotta make sure they line
Well, it has
up.
to have a specific amount. So let's say I'm working with a
Yep.
relative and I don't really care if I get paid or not.
Yeah.
Can I put as offered?
No,
Never.
can't. Gotta be, that was the thing, they wanted transparency, they want to, if they left it as whatever seller's offering, it's like you're going back to kind of the old thing of, oh, I'll take whatever, I work for free.
No, let's say I'm selling my mother a house. I'm willing to work for free.
But you can't, at least I understand it, because you can't do pro bono work. You could say, couldn't you just say like, you say in deeds, $10?
So the law says that it's a little bit
Well,
muddy. It's a little muddy.
Yeah.
And to keep everybody safe, I will make sure that it's just that you guys will stick to the clearest zone to be safe to
Right.
where, yeah, you can't do anything pro bono unless you pass the bar exam, and you didn't tell me. And the other reason why you can't is E&O will be like, oh, you're not charging anything? Then yeah, we're not covering you. They'll look at that.
Yeah,
So
that's-
they'll be like, oh, you didn't charge nothing. Great.
But-
You're on your own, buddy.
But what Jim has a valid point is like, if you want to do it for brother, sister.
$150.
I mean,
Put something.
well, there has to be something in there, but
Yeah.
suddenly, but your other second thing about like, if you don't have very little, will the firm still cover you? But if you think your brother or sister.
No, we will cover you as long as you charge something. No, think of like we had someone that wrote up like $1 million deal, a family member, and they're, helping out with it. And they're like, hey, we're not gonna charge, we're gonna basically credit that. We're like, yeah, not a problem, but keep something small.
Right.
They kept like $1,500 or something like that.
Yeah, $9.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Totally fine. All right, let's continue. Related to specific term 17, you're gonna keep going. General term U provides if there is any inconsistency between the buyer brokerage firm's compensation offered and the description of the offered compensation stated in a specific term, number 17A, the terms shall be as set forth in the published offer. Seller shall pay the buyer brokerage firm compensation set forth in specific term number 17B. This means that if a mistake is made when inserting the compensation offer into specific term 17A, the amount published in the listing will control as the amount seller is offering. The amount seller ultimately pays toward the buyer brokerage compensation will be as set forth in specific term number 17B. A term that must be agreed upon between seller and buyer. Review legal bulletin number 226 for more information and detail. Now, this one is definitely a little sticky. So what they're talking about is, let's say the listing said $3,000, right? The listing said 3,000. You put 5,000, right, in here. And this was 5,000. I guess we'll do the same. Okay, to make it a little bit easier. I don't want to make you guys too confused. So what they're saying is that this is confusing because the seller didn't offer 5,000. And brokers are getting a little confused, and I can understand why they would think this. I pick up the phone. Hey, Gavin, your seller is offering 3,000. My buyer broker service agreement is for 5. Your seller going to be cool paying 5?
Possibly, but I'd have to talk to you.
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
You talking to the seller? Yep, seller said fine. Yep, we're good.
Yeah.
I fill in my form. Yep, seller said they're fine. They're good with offering 5. So they put 5 in A. They put 5 in B.
But as an
That's
offer,
not
it's
accurate.
Still 3.
So
So
the
listing, still.
But based on the explanation, they're still gonna pay the fee.
They're still gonna pay B. I
No matter
know.
what.
No, yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
But it was actually it was filled in improperly because
Yeah.
what did they actually offer
$3,000.
was 3, so it should be 3.
Yeah.
Now, this is another thing. This is where they're trying to make things as clear as possible. Sellers offering 5. Buyer broker on the other end is terrible. Right? They suck. Listing broker knows it. They've been terrible to communicate with, and they talk to their seller. Go, seller, these guys suck. Hey, if we accept this offer, let's counter what they're willing, what we're covering for this. Okay. Seller's like, okay, I guess so. Nah, we're only going to give you 2. No, we'll give you 2,500. Right? So no, we're going to change this, and we're going to cross this off, and we're only going to give you 2,500. So we countered this, crossed them off, made initials. So is that allowed?
Well, it's allowed, it is illegal, or is it enforceable?
I don't think so, because on the listing, it says that they're offering this amount.
5,000. They said 5.
Yeah,
the
so they
listing.
have to pay 5.
The last written thing in terms of law takes priority.
No,
And if
no,
you're using transaction, this would automatically fill in.
No,
Right.
what he could
We
do,
countered it though.
can the
Listing brokers countered it.
can the listing change can that guy change his listing to 2,500 and then offer the?
Now, there's another thing that's another thing. If, and according to the Northwest MLS rules, we don't have the time to pull them all up, but you can look at it and it clearly states that the seller is not to manipulate what is offered for compensation in the event someone has already engaged with you and said, I'm writing the, Jim,
It's locked
I'm,
in. It's
yeah,
locked in.
you can't really back that out. Now, I tried to get Jeannie Simpson to answer this and she hates some of my questions, especially in a group of other attorneys or brokers. She's like, oh, Eric. But I asked her in this exact same scenario, said, okay, let's say the buyer broker's like, oh no, what are we gonna do? I gotta get this house from my buyer. Like, we're gonna lose it. We've been losing out. They finally agreed to something. Let's just accept it for now, and then can I come back for that money later? What do you think the answer is?
Well,
Oh, if they accept it.
Yeah, let's say this scenario I gave you, right? The seller offered 5.
right.
We countered, the listing broker countered back that, nope, we're only gonna do 2,500.
Can the list, then are you saying, can the buyer agent get back the 25? No, because you either have to do the addendum for buyer credit then, or the seller gets the money back.
It's kind of confusing, but according to the rules, actually, they are still owed that full amount. So it is a thing that is like, yep, they're actually, what have you published? In the event that you're like, Jim, yep, it says like, cause remember the old days.
That rule's always been in effect.
Exactly.
Whatever's published is what you get.
Exactly, whatever was
Yeah.
published is what should be paid. So you cannot manipulate that and play around and actually change it. So according to the MLS rules, we would be able to go after that. We probably have to go to an arbitration to go get it and stuff like that. But in the event, you're not supposed to be playing games like
So
that.
If everybody agreed to it.
Yeah, you'd have to probably go fight for it.
No, if everybody agreed to 25.
Yeah,
Okay, what's the mechanism for?
that's what I asked.
Is that a
That's what
Form
I
34
asked.
instead
I
of Form
couldn't get an
34?
answer.
Well, but there, yeah, because
You just do a Form 34?
I asked, and Jeannie was like really skirting, and like, Eric,
If everybody
I,
agrees to it, I'm sure there's a way to.
well, but what you're saying is that in order to get the buyer's agent, listen, he takes his deal, he modifies what the listing firm's offering to their favor. And so basically then what I'm hearing is that you can't change that, but suddenly now you're going to closing, as everything agreed on. You know, it's like, so can then, as you as a buyer's agent, then go back and say, well, we had our fingers crossed. I mean, this to me
Yeah.
seems like.
I mean, no matter what, it's gonna be a traffic jam, at the very end of the deal.
Right, yeah,
100% all cards on table, there's an agreement.
Yeah,
right, yeah,
Otherwise, you don't get a deal, you don't have a deal.
right, and that's,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, that's exactly, yeah, my point, is that, yeah. Because basically you have, in the days you'd have people say, well, my buyer wants 3%, you're only offering
You
2%.
don't have to agree to it because
Right.
it's already been cast in the listing agreement. Everybody saying, hey, look, we gotta get this thing together one by the other.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Number 26, addenda. Oh, I love this one. Insert each addendum and attachment in this space. You should identify the form number in the title. Example, 22A financing addendum, 22B contingency addendum, and 22D optional clauses addendum. Note, it is important to identify all addenda to ensure they will be incorporated by the reference as part of the agreement. This is the only place that identifies that there are contingencies such as financing or inspection. If you represent seller, do not reference Form 17 or Form 17C, seller disclosures form, because by referencing them, they may become part of the contract. Making Form 17 part of the contract has several unintended consequences, including making the attorney's fees provision apply. Ooh. In addition, Form 17 specifically says it is not part of the contract. Referencing the form in the contract only confuses the issue. Never, ever, ever should you see disclosures like Form 17.
So if an outside broker presents an offer and it has Form 17 reference there,
Yep.
you take it out?
Yes.
And by taking it out, you cause, I agree with doing that. You cause concern by brokers who may not understand because you took it out and I think you're trying to hide something. I mean, I think that would be common. They didn't really understand the whole issue.
Yeah.
The other question is, what happens when you're adding an addendum, right before closing to modify the agreement?
Yep.
Yep.
We're going to talk about this. And it's very, very confusing. Annie has a really good YouTube video on The catalog, that's what it is called.
Yeah.
18 is actually addenda, is actually the catalog to the agreement of everything that is a part of the sale, but just like it says, it should be addendums, not disclosures.
Yeah.
And any changes to the catalog, you really don't need initials.
It's a table of contents.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. You do not need initials. I've gone to bat so many times for you guys on this section where one of our brokers added something in the catalog. They didn't make initials. And the broker on the other end goes, oh, we don't have mutual. You added this. Like, no, we do. We have mutual. I had to send Andy's video to them. I go, you better get with your DB. Do not sign off on any other agreements because they were about to go sign another deal. And luckily they didn't because they would have sold the home twice.
So what you're saying.
It's very clear.
So yeah, because I've asked this question before.
Mhm.
So the addendum part, if someone puts in there another addenda, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
And so, so basically, we don't need initials on that.
nope. This catalog it does not need changes. So watch this. So first things first, no Form 17, no FERPTA. Let's look here. You see 22E in here? Nope, no 22E. Why did they not list it in here? Oh, that's because it's it's a disclosure. It's not an addenda. It's FERPTA is an addenda. You know how many times I see FERPTA on there? I'm not too worried about the FERPTA one being on the agreement. Right? I'm not worried too much about that one, but the Form 17, I literally saw that twice this week in offers
You see it on
and
the
stuff I
menu.
reviewed all the time. One of our brokers actually even accidentally wrote it in there on the offer made.
So what did you do? Did you have a?
Where I had them go and get it stricken and removed.
Right.
Now that one I would actually cross off,
Oh, yeah.
make initials to make it clear that this is not a part of the deal.
Well, yeah, because of.
So if you strike something in the addenda paragraph, you don't always need initials.
You don't need initials, yeah. But in the Form 17 one, I don't mind that one getting initialed, to be honest, because that one is like, wow,
Serious.
this is a serious one. It should never be a part of the actual contract. Because just like we read, it said in the event you did that, that would constitute seller's election of remedies.
So if
So
you
it's
represent a
bad.
buyer,
Yeah,
you put it in.
I would not.
No, if you represent a buyer.
Yeah, I would not.
Why?
Because the good broker on the other end is probably gonna be
No,
like,
there's not
are
a
you
good broker.
crazy?
There's not a good broker on the other end.
Well, I mean,
Nine
do
times
you
out of
wanna
10,
risk
there's
it?
not a good broker on the other
Do you
end.
wanna risk it to where it's a deal where they're gonna reject yours and wait for a better deal?
The other broker wouldn't have a clue.
So, but
Maybe,
why?
8 out of 10 brokers wouldn't have a clue.
yeah,
Right, I agree, but why would you, I guess my question is that, why would you put a Form 17 on the addenda? Because for me, at least from my perspective,
Because it may impose more liability on the seller.
oh yeah,
Like,
it absolutely
the estate or
does.
Whatever, it gives you election, it gives you right to attorneys.
right, but also, it also becomes a thing that depending on what the issues are that were disclosed, becomes an issue like I think of Countrywide.
Yeah,
Way back in the
Annie
day,
called,
where
she
they were
called
asking
that
for the inspection
a
and
bad
everything.
business
Yes.
practice.
Yeah.
She said it's just straight up bad business practice. You would not even as a buyer broker try to like have a trump card.
Right.
She explained it, like you don't do that. It's just.
Well, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Jim. I'm thinking more like who else is gonna be looking at this thing? And if it's, I could see some firms saying, wait a minute, there's a process of molding this property and there are people are fine with it. And they're gonna go, wait a minute, we're not gonna give you a zero down payment loan. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
So you make an offer, right? You've got all of your addenda on here. Oh, I hate this new stupid AI box. It blocks everything. I need to turn that thing off. So put everything in here that's included in your offer. Now, let me hit you guys, hold on, Joe. Let me hit you guys with the question. Oops. Let's say this is all filled in, right? Everything is here listed on the addenda line, but the Form 35, the inspection contingency. But the Form 35 is included in the offer. What does that mean? Does that mean when you're the listing broker, you go, oh, they didn't fill it in on the catalog, so it's not valid? What do you think?
No, because you just said you can make any changes to the table of contents.
That's right.
So as long as you include it in the package for
Yep.
the offer, then it's there.
So let's switch it up. Now, let's say it was listed on there, but there was no 35.
Then,
What does that mean?
It should still mean the same thing.
nope, because the table
So
of
you
contents.
didn't actually receive the form.
So that means
So-
therefore there's no,
Yeah.
there's no inspection. But then by then you probably want to do proper business and say, hey, you forgot your sheet. so-
Well, now this is the part. See, this is the same thing. I'm glad you that see, like, it's an internal struggle. I can tell you guys got that, like, oh my gosh, I got a duty to be fair, right? And
You
ethical.
represent the listing, I guess.
Yeah, you're the listing broker. You're gonna have to go to your seller and go, oh, here's the addenda line. They listed the document that says it's a part of their agreement, but it's not here. Seller, what do you wanna do? If we sign off on this, my hunch is they're probably gonna go, yep, what time should we do the inspection? Now we don't have actual documentation to know what their timeline is. What if they had 80 days on there?
Right, but
What if,
But you never signed it.
but you never signed it, right? There is no inspection, but you see what I mean? You don't wanna go down the path
That's the one.
and kind of have a struggle at the very end.
Best practices is.
Yeah. Talk to your seller, get it
Legally,
figured
you're
out.
Fine, but best practice says you're gonna possibly run
Yeah.
into brick walls.
It's exactly the same thing of the agreement, like we talked about on 17B. Yeah, 17B, same type of scenario, go to your seller, have the conversation.
But the point is that conversation.
Yep, have the
that
conversation.
almost should be, especially with the way the rules have changed, talk to who you're representing first.
Yep,
You know, almost everything is.
Absolutely.
yep,
It wasn't that way when I started.
yeah.
West.
All right, so if you're in that thing where you have to add something, right, and you're adding it in, you can write Form 36, counter offer. You do not need to do, you don't have to like go ahead and strike other stuff if you're removing it. It is okay to cross it off and not have to have initials. If someone initials it and they send it to you, you're the listing broker and you're like, what am I gonna? Okay, whatever. We'll go along and we'll initial it. We don't care. We want to get mutual. Sometimes you bend the rules, don't break the rules,
Yeah.
right? It's one of those things.
It's accommodated.
It's just accommodated. Yeah, just
You're just accommodated.
just do it.
Pick
all
your-
right.
Pick your battles.
Exactly. All right, signatures and date. Let's see. Have Gavin read. Gavin, you want to do this one?
Signatures and dates. Buyer and seller should sign and date the agreement. If spouses, both must sign unless the property is one spouse's sole and separate property. If there are more than two properties that need to sign the agreement, or parties that need to sign the agreement, for seller or buyer, use the additional signer addendum form 22Z. If buyer or seller is a corporation, partnership, LLC, estate, or trust, put one, the entity name, two, the word by, to indicate the person is signing as a representative of the entity. The signature of the offer, trustee, personal representative, or partner, and fourth, the individual's title. For example, ABC Corporation by name, its president. XYZ LLC by name, its managing member. Lee Family Trust dated December 10th, 1998 by name, trustee. If it is being signed by a power of attorney, the person signing should indicate they are acting as the attorney in fact. For example, Quinn and Robin Lee by blank, their attorney in fact. If the agreement is signed by someone with power of attorney, ask to see a copy of the power of attorney. If the power of attorney has not been recorded, the closing agent will need the original to record at closing. Corporations, LLCs, trusts, and guardians cannot sign by a power of attorney.
Yeah, so be really careful when you got someone who tells you, hey, I got a power of attorney, you're selling this house, and you're like, oh, not a problem. Can you send that over? Send a copy. And do know that escrow is going to want the original. So please, hopefully you got it. Look at it, make sure it's, and if you have questions, bring it to us. Definitely send it to your title officer. For them to have the title attorney, they can look at it to make sure it's all on the up and up and okay to, for you guys to be signing off on those listings. Or the purchases or whatever it may be, just get it beforehand.
As far as initials go.
Yeah.
Let's say you're initialing various parts of the agreement, should they be dated as well?
Yeah. Every signature,
Setup.
date, yes, 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 yes. Initials, date, it's gotta be dated. Anytime that you leave a chance of ambiguity in an agreement, it's gonna be issues, right? You just got to sign initial date, always goes next to it. Otherwise, people they can't understand where you're at in the contract. You could literally have an expiration, people are signing, there's no dates. Well, shoot, did they even sign it in time? You're gonna it's just, yeah, bad contracts all around. Address, insert the address, city and state, zip, phone numbers, fax, blah, 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 email, insert buyer, seller's name. Addresses if available, note that general term K provides that if a party is unrepresented, email transmission of any document of notice or document shall constitute delivery if the email is sent to the party's email addresses specified on the page 1 of the agreement. That's why you fill in their address. So a lot of people go, do I have to put in the buyer's address? Well, you're supposed to. Real estate firms, insert the name of the buyer brokerage firm. Listing brokerage firm is licensed. It is important that the information be filled in because it is part of the agency disclosure. If the same firm represents both buyer and seller, insert the firm's name in both the buyer brokerage firm and listing brokerage firm spaces. MLS office number, insert the MLS number assigned to the office. A list of all the offices, their office numbers can be found in the membership information function in the matrix system. Good thing you guys use transaction desk because it automatically fills in all of this stuff for you. Buyer broker, listing broker, insert the names. Buyer broker's fax numbers, insert buyer broker's firm, listing brokerage firm, document email, insert the buyer brokerage firms and listing brokerage firms document email addresses, the email transmission of any notice or document, or a direct link to such notice or document constitutes delivery when 1, the email is sent to both the buyer broker and the buyer brokerage firm, or both listing broker and the listing brokerage firm at the email addresses on page 1 of the agreement, or 2, buyer broker or listing broker provide written acknowledgement of receipt of the email. An automatic email reply does not constitute written acknowledgement. So do not forget when you're sending offers, sending counters, sending addendums that are signed, they've got to go to both that other broker and the other broker's authorized firm email address every single time. It's not just the initial offer. It's every single time you are sending. You've got to be sending it to both. Get into a habit of making sure you're
Like
CCing.
from the original one.
Yep.
Just reply all to that.
Yeah.
You don't have to-
Yep. License numbers, insert the buyer brokers, buyer brokers firms, listing brokers and listing brokers firms, license numbers issued by the Department of Licensing. If you don't fill those in, it's actually, you're delaying your deals for the lender. The underwriter and the team, you know, when they're reviewing stuff, if there's stuff missing, literally your file gets moved out of the pile. They can't process it unless it's there. They basically go, hey, this info's missing. Here you go, so-and-so, you need to go get all these. Now you just delayed your own deals because you're not filling it in. So don't do that. That's lazy. Use transaction desk. Like I said, it should auto be filling these in. What's the only time that this information should not be filled in on one side? What's the only time?
Unrepresented buyer or unrepresented.
Ding, 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 unrepresented client. There's an unrepresented seller, that side should not be filled in. Unrepresented buyer, that left side should not be filled in.
I think you should have these test questions.
Oh, man.
These are good questions.
Okay, we are time to jump into some more parts of the form, and we are gonna start with my favorite one. All right, you ready? Purchase price. Everybody, phone should be put away. Zoom people, pay close attention. This is where it is incredibly important. If you miss this, you could be putting your clients into breach right from the beginning of writing an offer. All right, I'm gonna drink some water to be ready. Purchase price. Buyer shall pay to seller the purchase price, including the earnest money, in cash at closing, unless otherwise specified in this agreement. Buyer represents that buyer has sufficient funds to close this sale in accordance with this agreement and is not relying on any contingent source of funds, including funds from loans, the sale of other property, gifts, retirement, or future earnings, except to the extent otherwise specified in this agreement. The parties shall use caution when wiring funds to avoid potential wire fraud. Before wiring funds, the party wiring funds shall take steps to confirm any wire instructions via an independently verified phone number and other appropriate measures. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what I call the Jerry Maguire clause. Show me the money. You should be completely understanding that when you are representing a buyer, that you need to find this out no matter what. If you don't, you're probably going to be writing an offer that is putting your client in breach of the agreement, and they're going to be losing their earnest money. If you do not understand the boilerplate language in A. How does this look? What does this look like? I am the buyer broker. Gavin is my buyer. Gavin, you want to write an offer. He says he wants to buy this house at $700,000. First thing I need to ask Gavin is, show me the money. Show me the money. How do you do this? You have to say, hey, Gavin, okay, you want to make an offer on this? Great. Is your down payment and your earnest money, is that in checkings or is it in savings?
Yep, I got it in my checking right here.
Why am I asking him that way?
It might be, oh yeah, it's in my stock account.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whatever.
If the buyer's relying, you see that part where I read that by default, every deal we write it's an all cash deal. Automatically a cash deal.
But yeah, my grandma said she would wire it to me.
Yep. So when you fill this out, it says US dollars. Okay.
Purchase price.
Purchase price, US dollars. Earnest money, US dollars. It's just saying that is the format,
Not taking checks.
right? So right from the beginning, that even the earnest money, it says that they have it. They have those funds.
Or if they haven't something that's liquid that day, but it's not a checking or savings account.
So what do you mean? Like they have cash in their hands? It's
Well,
like,
no, they have
Crypto or something.
Yeah, well, there's certain things, like I had a client who was an offer on my listing and basically not my client. But he came back and he says, well, do you have the money? He says, okay, then next day he sent me a wire saying, well, here it is. You know, it wasn't, it wasn't.
so if they're wiring funds, you have to know where are the funds? Where is it coming from?
Right.
If it's not in checkings or savings, then you probably pretty much need to include a 22 EF, the evidence of funds.
But isn't this the one Annie says, like nowadays, we should always have a 22 EF?
Oh, yeah,
You know, 'cause
she
that-
does.
Yeah.
And we'll get in more into that when we get to that forms class. And I don't want to go down a road that, yes, we need to understand that part, but honestly, if it's not in checkings or savings, those funds, then you've got to basically disclose in this deal, otherwise they're gonna be in breach.
Weren't you the one who had the classic case where somebody said they had funds, find out it's a gift later? And they
Yep,
came
so yeah, I'm gonna get into that. So
Give 'em your best story.
this is the thing that happens in a lot of times. I had a new broker, her first deal, and this is way back. I don't know, this is probably, South Hill. So I think it was 2015 or 2017. I don't know, it's about 2015, 2016. First deal, 500 grand. Buyers like, yep, I can't wait. I'm approved, ready to go. So they write the offer up. Earnest money was like 20 grand. He was putting like a large amount down. I think he was putting like 25 or 30% down. So our buyer broker wrote it up. And they're getting all the way to the week of closing. Inspection went smooth. Everything was smooth as glass. And we're in the week of closing. All of a sudden, escrow calls the broker and says, hey, I just got off the phone. It sounds like, with the buyer, it sounds like we're not closing. The gift funds aren't coming through. And our broker was like, gift funds? What are you talking about? And escrow agent said, well, yeah, apparently the buyer was getting the down payment was coming. In fact, earnest money even came from the grandmother. And long story short, as soon as the grandmother found out that the buyer was moving in his girlfriend into the home before they were married, she said, nope, I refuse to give you the gift funds to close on this deal now. So now the buyer was in breach because the way they wrote the deal, they did not use a 22F to disclose that there were gift funds coming from grandma. So now the $20,000 or 25 grand was basically lost. Because the seller was like, I'm not giving, you didn't tell us you're using gift funds because they can't close the deal now. So they said, yep, we're keeping your earnest money. So it's things like that. If you don't get it right and you don't ask the buyer, and a lot of times, and this is the thing you're going to run into. Oh, yeah, Kenny, my deal, I'm ready to buy this house. I'm all cash. We don't need financing. I'm all cash. No problem. We'll close in 20 days. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, my hard money loan. They're getting a hard money loan and they think it's all cash. It's a loan. It even has the word loan in it. So you need to do your due diligence, ask the buyer, think of the Jerry Maguire clause, think, show me the money. How do I get them to show me the money? Ask them. Oh, your earnest money and your down payment, is it in checkings or in savings?
But isn't that something that, I mean, yeah, you can ask to, but isn't that something that you're not a close relationship with the lender too?
Oh, yeah, you definitely
would-
want
that
to
would the
communicate
lender
with the
could-
lender
that
and
would the lender
ask.
would know, like,
But no matter what, even in the deal, like I told you, the story about the grandmother,
yeah,
the lender didn't even tell the broker that there were gift
Yeah.
funds involved. And they had a close relationship. They talked. They just forgot about it.
Still just wanna ask, cause what if the lender missed it?
Yeah,
Or they forgot to tell the lender?
yeah.
Cause they might be like, oh, I totally forgot to tell Bob, the lender,
This happens, you guys, all the time. So do not get caught in this. This is going to get you. It's going to bite you. And the buyer will end up losing their earnest money if in the event those don't come through. And same thing, it just says right here, unless otherwise specified in the agreement, you must specify in the agreement somewhere. So the easiest way to specify, right, is your closing costs, or excuse me, like closing costs, earnest money, down payment, all of those funds should be coming from checkings or savings. If it's not, you got to disclose it. So you got to be in a habit of every time you're working with a buyer, hey, is this money in your checkings or in your savings?
even if it is like a given all cash buyer and it's coming
Yeah.
from checking, like, why not? Just be like, yeah.
Yep. Even if it is all cash, okay,
Here it
where's it
is.
at? Checkings or savings? Oh, I'm actually pulling money from my 401k. That's not checkings or savings.
Right.
That's what's called as a contingent source of funds. Contingent source of funds is any of these items, loans, sale of a property, gift, retirement, or future earnings, even crypto, whatever it is. Diamonds.
Didn't you say someone bought a house in Bitcoin?
Yeah. Yep. We
So
had
what
someone
if they-
use
they just-
Bitcoin.
they did-
Nelia in our office is the first broker in Washington that had a crypto sale. All the earnest money, everything was like
So she
crypto.
did 22.
And the
yeah,
seller,
and
yeah.
with Bitcoin.
Yep, the seller was cool with it because they were into crypto too.
Okay,
So
okay.
you gotta be prepared. Think of the Jerry Maguire clause. All right, earnest money. We went into depth about that one. Included items, we went into depth, conditional title, we did this, closing possession. We already went into depth on that one. Sale information, we got a report, FERPTA, we did that, notice of delivery, computation of time. This is the one that I want to make sure you guys understand. This will be the last item we cover. Unless otherwise specified in this agreement, any period of time measured in days stated in the agreement shall start on the day following the event commencing the period and shall expire at 9 p.m. of the last calendar day of the specified period of time. Phew, except for the possession date. If the last day is a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, as defined in RCW 1:1650, the specified period of time shall expire on the next day that is not a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. Any specified period of time, 5 days or less, except for any time period related to possession date, shall not include Saturday, Sundays, or legal holidays. If the parties agree that an event will occur on a specified calendar date, the event shall occur on that date, except for the closing date, which, if it falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, is defined by RCW 1:1650, or a day when the county recording office is closed, shall occur on the next day that is not a Saturday, Sunday, legal holiday, or any day when the county recording office is closed. When counting backwards from closing, any period of time measured in days shall start on the day prior to closing. And if the last day is a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday as defined by RCW 1:1650, the specified period of time shall expire on the next day moving forward that is not a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. Example, Monday or Tuesday. If the parties agree upon and attach a legal description after this agreement is signed by the offeree and delivered to the offerer, then for the purposes of computing time, mutual acceptance shall be deemed to be on the date of delivery of an accepted offer or counteroffer to the offerer, rather than the date the legal description is attached. Time is of the essence of the agreement. Whew, a lot of language in here for legality, right? So really, honestly, when you're dealing with computing time, bust out your phone, look at the calendar, look at the month, look at the day in which you're on. Know that if it's, weekends, and if you're 5 days or less, weekends and holidays do not count. Okay? 5 days or less, commencing day. If you got mutual acceptance today, it's the 23rd. You have a 5-day home inspection. Basically, tomorrow is commencing day, and you had today's mutual. So Thursday's day 1, Friday's day 2. Then Monday would be day 3, 4 for the 29th on Tuesday, and then 5-day 30th would be Wednesday. That's when by 9 p.m. the inspection contingency is due.
But if it was 4 days, because if it was 4 days, then it would end on the weekend.
No,
Tuesday.
never.
Oh,
5 or
5 days
less.
Five.
5 or less. It's business days
Oh.
counting. It's only going to be business days. If it's 6 days or greater, then it counts on weekends, but just like we read, it cannot end on a Saturday, Sunday, or a legal holiday. Okay, that's the easiest way to keep this clear. Assignment, buyers cannot assign agreements without seller's prior written consent unless that said buyer and or assigns, identifying after a buyer's name or LLC name. Default, in the event buyer defaults without legal excuse to complete the purchase and sale of the property, then the following provisions identified in specific term 8 shall apply. Forfeiture of earnest money is what we always mark. Professional attorney's advice on attorney's fees. If the buyer and seller advise to seek the legal or counsel of attorney and certify the public accountant to review the terms of the agreement, buyer and seller shall pay their own fees incurred for such review. However, if buyer or seller institutes suit against the other concerning the agreement, or if the party holding the earnest money commences an interpleader action, prevailing party is entitled to reasonable attorney's fees and expenses. We already talked about offer, counteroffer, ending dates. Review this the video from the recording for part 1 of this if you need to. Agency disclosure, we did that. Brokerage firm compensation, we went into depth on that. Cancellation right, lead-based paint. You must have lead-based paint if it's a federal form. 22Js must be in there. And then information verification period we went through. Property condition disclaim, we did that. And then fair housing, of course, we go through that. And that is it, you guys. We went through everything. Thank you so much for making it today. Hopefully you learned a lot again in this session. And again, if you need to review this, it will be in our YouTube channel on the playlist for both new agent and in the forms class. And so thank you for making it. We will see you guys on the next one.